It's a huge opportunity and a huge market, right? Like if you look at the global manufacturing industry, it's a $20 trillion industry. If you put that into comparison with, let's say, one of the most hype markets at the moment for AI, legal services, right? That's only $1 trillion global market. So we're talking about you have a 20x larger market, which is essentially also greenfield, right? You still have a lot of white space to tackle. And I think this is what makes generally this problem space extremely attractive and extremely important because at the end of the day, everything around us is built in factories.
Welcome back to the Lobster Talks, where I bring you the very best YC founders. And today I want to talk about the other kinds of YC AI companies that no one talks about. Everyone thinks YC AI companies are building copilots and SaaS tools, but some of the most quietly powerful YC startups are watching factory floors, not dashboards. So today we're breaking down why YC keeps backing industrial computer vision companies, what signals actually matter for investors, and why this category may outperform far more hyped AI sectors. My guest is Karim Saleh, CEO of Cerrion, a YC-backed company, obviously using video AI to eliminate production line failures in real time. So, Karim, very excited to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Gavin.
All right. I hope I did justice to what you're doing in my quick presentation, but if you could just introduce briefly yourself, your team, and what you're building at Cerrion.
Sure. So I'm one of the co-founders and CEO of Cerrion. And essentially what we are building is a video AI agents platform that allows manufacturers to deploy camera AI agents that leverage standard cameras to monitor critical production areas of their manufacturing lines, detect issues instantly and respond to them in real time, either through closed loop action, so directly interacting with equipment, stopping a machine, slowing down a conveyor, or through alerting their operators on the shop floor to reduce downtime, safety risks, and quality issues, helping them essentially run problem-free production.
That's everything we need in in the US to have all those factories work so well. I mean, it seems it's very interesting because you went through YC in the summer 22 batch, so already almost 4 years ago now. And so today it seems almost obvious that any factory should have this. At the time it was very different. So maybe tell me a little bit how you came to that problem, and you're almost an AI company before the AI wave. So tell me how you
Yeah.
how you got that insight that this was the future of factories.
I think generally like the fact that manufacturing needs automation was not a new insight, right? So if you look at the industrial landscape, you always had technology innovation happening there, right? So I'd call it pre-AI, pre-software, a lot of sensor technology. All of the largest sensor companies in the world, they make their business in manufacturing. So it was always clear that there's potential and a need to have better technology to run their processes. The challenge was always actually how do you implement this technology at scale and scale it down, not just like within a single manufacturer, but across industries and across the industry to build big business. And the unique insight is that with AI now, you can actually enable that quick, fast ROI deployment in a scalable manner to actually like bring this technology to as many factories as possible.
I'm also asking questions as they come, obviously, and wondering of the listeners who might be asking the same questions. I think one of the big hurdles was, curious if it still is, that many factory floors didn't have the equipment, the cameras, because your image vision, you need to have a camera watching the floor. And I'm guessing now most factory floors have the camera. You can just deploy the software. Was it already the case in 2022? Is it still a hurdle today?
You still might find a lot of factory floors that don't have cameras, which is not generally a challenge, right? Because cameras are a commodity and super easy to install. The challenge is and was mainly that every factory floor looks different. So how do you build AI that is able to adapt and adjust to the different production lines without needing all of the manual effort, which was traditionally needed if you want to train AI models?
That's an amazing problem. How do you actually solve it?
A good point. So essentially, I think one thing which vision language models allowed us to have, and large language models in general, is that you can generalize models across deployments very easily, right? So if you have a general understanding of, for example, what a fallen bottle is in a beverage production line that produces glass bottles, it generalizes also to like a canned bottle because you can have the semantic understanding, which you don't know, right? So now also you're able to have these large transformer-based models that have full production understanding and then distill knowledge to a specific use case as you go.
So it's your work has gotten much easier with the newest large language models. Was that even possible in 22 when you launched?
It wasn't, right? So there was a lot of also why now and a lot of grinding us by. The way we adapted is like first thing first, an initial use case is making sure that we do a really good job on that, build the platform around it, which allowed us to once when model advancements happen to incorporate very easily and make sure we can add that value.
It's also very interesting because there's a huge trend now since probably a year ago, 2025, maybe 2024, I'm not sure, probably 25 with the election of Donald Trump and stuff like that to, America first and reindustrialize the US and do, build in the US and not abroad, including semiconductors and defense, and basically just have way more industries in the US. And you were, again, a huge precursor to that trend. What pushed you to build into that sector in 2022, where it was really not the trend at the time? And again, you were 3 years ahead of everyone else.
I believe when you're building, right, like you should not follow trends or hype cycles in general, right? Like I think when how we approach it from a very first principle nature. I come from like a manufacturing background in Egypt, so I always knew how important manufacturing is and how critical it is for society, whether it's like in the US or in Europe or anywhere around the world, right? And at the same time, there is also this is also a market which is extremely underserved, right? Just because it's super hard to build there. So independent, whether now it's cool or cooler than before, we think that you should build for manufacturing. More people should build for manufacturers, right? Because they deserve better tools. They deserve also the best technology, and for having as many smart people work for them as possible.
First of all, did you feel the boom in 25 of US manufacturing? Do you have so you're based in Europe? Probably we talk about this at some point because it is one of my. I'm from Europe and now based in the US, and so one of my favorite topics. But do you have a lot of customers in the US? And if yes, did you feel the sort of pull of the market of this
Yeah.
new wave of reindustrialization in 2025?
Yeah, so our largest deployments are in the US, right? So the US is from, we would view ourselves as a global company, not a European company in that sense, right? So we are deployed across 16 countries with the US
Wow.
as the number one, where we have most factories live. I definitely see that, right? Like I think there has been a revitalization around, hey, let's make sure we are at the forefront of technology. Hey, let's make sure we have the best tools for our people. Let's make sure we get back to being competitive and best in class.
That's awesome. And so why haven't you moved the company to the US if most of your customers are there? That's typical
Yeah.
question with YC that comes again and again,
Sizzle.
including with my ties to Europe. So curious on your take on this question.
We're building out a team in the US, right? So we are actively doing that, and we view of ourselves like we'll be headquarters both in Zurich and New York, right? Serving both our customers in the US, Canada, Latin America, but also being close to our European customers, right? And helping them solve their production challenges in the best way possible.
That's awesome. Okay, great. So you are as many European companies. If you want to explode in the US, you have to have a presence here. Um,
Yeah.
why do you think there's been several companies like this in YC, and so across different batches? Why do you think this category is ever present in every market cycle, pre AI, post AI? Why do you think this category of industrial optimization, I don't know if we should call it that way, is ever present and so important?
I think generally because it's a huge opportunity in a huge market, right? Like if you look at the global manufacturing industry, it's a $20 trillion industry. If you put that into comparison, right, with let's say one of the most hype markets at the moment for AI, legal services, right? That's only $1 trillion global market. So we're talking about you have a 20x larger market with which is essentially also greenfield, right? You still have a lot of white space to tackle. And I think this is what makes generally this problem space extremely attractive and extremely important because at the end of the day, everything around us is built in factories.
Yeah, factories are everything, and it's very interesting. economical theory was, oh, we don't need factories. We'll make everything abroad where it's cheaper. Globalization, and of course now, a lot of people are sort of walking this back. I'll ask you sort of the other side of that question, which is it has never stopped, and the opportunity is huge. And so, why, in your opinion, and hopefully it's you become the giant, but why hasn't a giant emerged, a big winner in the space, a YC decacorn that just dominates the huge market? And again, hopefully you're on your way, but what's missing today?
I think I think there's generally like two main challenges. One is from a technical perspective, right? That the fact that manufacturing is very fragmented, right? So if you even we talk about manufacturing as being like one market, but if you dig deep, there's a lot of different smaller verticals, and essentially also every vertical has somehow its set of vertical specific pain points, right? So how do you build a technology platform that is able to scale and provide then each a lot of enough utility for every vertical while being able to cover a broad range of use cases, right? So that's like a one main challenge, which has been the largest bottleneck, right? And this is essentially a big driver where AI now is allowing us to scale the technology in a much, much more efficient manner than we ever could, right? So that's one. And the other one is it's just like really hard to deploy technology and make sure you have the on top of the workflows on top, you have all of the value driving mechanisms and can onboard a lot of factories, make them successful at scale, right? And I think a lot of people building and manufacturing would be thinking of their solutions only from a technical perspective, right? Like it's an engineering problem. How do we tackle it in the best way possible? But one thing which a lot of solutions then lack is, hey, how do you actually get the human in the loop and make sure that you build workflows around this technology that embeds you into the day-to-day operations of production teams. So it becomes really you can achieve this behavioral change, which then allows you to deliver this ROI at scale.
That's real. I mean, it makes so much sense. How do you include it in the existing workflow in the everyday life? Could you share some of the things that you've found and implemented to do that?
Yeah, I think for us is as mentioned before, we have like our technology is like one, we detect issues and we respond to them. Another thing we have is then the workflows on top, right? So essentially the way we view it, every action we trigger on the shop floor, right, like needs to be measurable. And we need to be able to have a clear process owner in the factory who's responsible for that and incorporates this information. So the way we do it is whenever we deploy, part of our deployment process is we go into those factories and we understand hey, how do they operate today? Who's the one running the morning meetings, the shift meetings in the morning? Who's one running the shift handovers, right? And what data do they incorporate and how can we make sure that the data they get out of Cerrion just like fits into the daily day workflow, which is like it's saving them time and not an additional analytics they need to incorporate, right? And then how do we make sure that they're closing the loop from insight to action? And we track that in a very easy way so we can see, hey, are we actually progressing to their production goals? Are we helping them really achieve their main KPIs of driving down downtime and cost or not? And we focus very much on that, right? So it's a big part of our, I would say, of our service is the customer success process we layer on top of our platform.
Yeah, I mean, it's the key, right? It's the name of the game. If at the end of the day, there's so many solutions, including AI, completely different domain, but that are ultimately not used by the people, and if it needs to be used to actually provide value. I want to go to a slightly different topic, but again, sort of picking your brain on this industry, it is arguably much harder to get a factory floor to convert to your solution than to get another YC startup to try your AI tool. So, in SaaS, we just track MRR growth. That's the only signal YC cares about. In industrial AI, are there other types of signals that you're tracking that really mean maybe in the usage that what you just mentioned, and how do you go about sort of signing up those very old legacy industries? What have you found success with?
For us, the North Star metric also with our customers is NRR, right? How do customers expand after getting the product into their hands? And are they the ones actually pushing us to get the technology and more production lines and more factories in? Or is it an uphill battle to get to this point, right? Because at the end of the day, I think good thing about manufacturers is like they also want to have standards, right? So if you're providing value and you can showcase quickly that you're actually helping them solve their main pain points in an efficient manner and make their life easier, you also have a clear path on expanding the scope of work in a way you will not be able to have in any kind of SaaS you would otherwise be selling to other startups or other companies.
If the customer expands, that's the best sign there is. Um, Let me move on into sort of a slightly different direction. I would say most of my guests on this podcast are more recent batches than you in summer 22, almost 4 years ago. And God, has the landscape changed since 2022? It was a partially remote YC batch. It was a very different global scene. It was different interest rates. It was still the end of zero interest rate policy. So I want to talk to you about fundraising. How did you navigate fundraising at YC, during YC, and during demo day season, and then ever since? If you've raised capital, I actually don't know if you've raised since 2022, but again, the landscape has changed so much. I'd be very curious to see how you've navigated all of those very, very different wins and different fundraising climates.
I think it's sticking to the fundamentals, right? Like at the end of the day, if you build a good business, which means you're able to you have a product, you build a product that generates value, you're able to prove that and continue generating happy customers at scale. I think that now like the conversations becomes a different one. So our focus has always been how do we deliver, make sure our product is actually solving our customers' pain points, and how are we able to do that with them at scale, right? So um, and I think this also which made also for our Series A, for example, the compelling story is being able to see and prove that, hey, we can go in on a very small scale, prove value to a customer, showcase them the product on a very fast time to value timeline. And then from there on, we also have the ability then to replicate this success across their entire operation in a very short period of time.
Okay, so yeah, congrats on the big Series A at the end of 2025. Um, was was that a U.S. investor, or was it a European investor?
We did it with Creandum, right? They're European based, but they also have a strong footprint
Cool.
across the US, but also YC double down, Gold Capital double down.
Wow. Okay.
So it's like on both sides.
Okay, and it's exactly fitting, your company, one foot in each continent. Um, I try to cater those for all the types of listeners that we get. We get a lot of investors listening to this, and so for those founders, either even going through YC right now, and of course the ones trying to go to YC, are there some signals, early signals that you saw that tells you sort of that the business is working before the revenue explodes? Is it the usage or the adoption? Like, what have you seen that's internally informing you that it's already working before the NRR, the net revenue retention and expansion from the customers?
Yeah. I think the initial pull to get this technology into factories, right? So before building even writing a single line of code, we had like 5 paid pilots signed
Wow.
with very large manufacturers, which essentially gave us as a team, but also I think anyone who was looking at Cerrion from the outside, a very strong validation that we are tackling a real pain point and that what we're actually aspiring to build is important. And that's what we focused on. That's we took that signal and just ran with it.
Yeah. Can you give advice to founders on, hey, how to get 5 pilots without before writing a single line of code? Like, how, I'm starting a company tomorrow. How would I go and do exactly that?
I think the key is like understand the deep understanding of your customers' pain points, right? Because if you can understand the customer pain points quite well, you can also understand the impact, right? And understand the cost of inaction. And if you have all of these components, people, and then you can come and tell them, hey, we potentially have a solution for your problem. We can get people who will jump on it and say, hey, let's try to aspire together. I think one change which is different now is given what you can do with vibe coding, right? How, at the speed of building products, I would now push really to have also something to show, right? Because at our time, when we started, that was 2022, right? End of 2022, uh, just showing a few slide decks, showing some examples and articulating a vision was enough. Maybe today the goalpost changed a bit, but I think it all comes down to the same thing, right? Focusing on customer pain points and positioning yourself as a partner to them and a way for them to tackle these issues at scale.
Yeah, it's fascinating because so many users think, hey, I gotta build for months and months and months before actually showing it. And agreed that maybe the times have changed a little bit with vibe coding, but in 2022, not that long ago, hey, you just have 5 pilots before writing a single line of code. That's just so inspiring, or it should be inspiring for entrepreneurs listening to us, um and you should exactly be doing the same. In last week's episode, I had Keaton Lucis from Point One, and he said a sentence that I loved. Um, Getting early customers is only by well, he said it much better than me, but you just need to understand the pain point to get the early customers. But if you want them to retain them in the long run, you got to not just understand the pain, but actually provide a real solution. So that's probably the same thing for you. You get the pilots, you actually have to deliver value very quickly in order to actually keep the customers. Did they actually, remain with you, those 5 pilots, or was it too early and you lost them and built along the way and found new customers?
I think what we did, right? So we were able to retain them, but it took us a long time until we actually were able then to expand them and scale with them, right? Because then this is where you really then comes what you mentioned, right? How then do you solve that pain point for them once and for all, right? And if you want to really do that, you need to be spend a lot of time with the customers, right? You need to really make sure that you also are tackling all of the nuances. And in the challenge in industrial AI, and when you were deploying technology in factories, you also need to get to a point where you're robust to all of the different edge cases, right? That you're actually have a product that's not just solving a problem, but is reliable enough to run in a 24/7 operation and deliver the same standard of value, right? So it took us actually then a while by just like having our heads down and working for it. But then once we got to the point that we actually had our agents that were able to run efficiently, take actions on the shop floors, it is actually exploded, right? Because those customers have moved quite fast to expand. And then we had, on the backdrop of those initial successes, right, we were able then to expand very fast across these entire verticals.
That's very cool. Um, there's this question I've seen. Well, I've seen thousands and thousands of YC companies now, and many obviously are in software only. But I've actually seen quite a few companies, usually in the vision space, computer vision or whatever it is, that basically, in order for your solution to work, you need the cameras, right? And there's one company in the current YC batch that's trying to prevent shoplifting in stores, which happens a lot in San Francisco. But same thing, like you need the camera in the store to see what happens, or it could be, cameras at traffic lights or cameras at whatever. I'm an investor in a company that's putting cameras in fast food restaurants to measure how long people wait and how fast the queue is moving at your McDonald's or Taco Bell or whatever. Anyway, you always need to have the cameras there. So my question to you is, many cases, many times, they don't have the cameras, or maybe they don't have the right kind of cameras. There's not enough image or high enough resolution. So if and when a customer is ready to sign but just need extra cameras and it's a big price burden for them, what is the solution? There's so like we don't know the answer. I'd love to have your perspective. There's so many
Yeah.
options, but basically my question is, do you buy it for them and you just give it to them and you hope to make the money back on the subscription? Or how do you convince them to buy it themselves? What have you found? Because I'm sure you've had this problem and so many founders had it.
Like I think like hardware cost of cameras is not the issue, right? Cameras are commodity. It's a few $100 to buy a camera. So I would say I would focus on making sure that you're providing enough value that actually this one-off payment doesn't change anything in in the ROI equation, right? So for us, really, that's not like a bottleneck because we're providing customers so much value, right, with our technology, that the ROI is so high that having a small one-off fee in the beginning, right, and having someone come in, install the cameras, and make sure that it's there doesn't actually impact anything in the equation. It's just like a question of, hey, how fast can we do that so they can start receiving value ASAP.
I love that answer. It's really cool. I mean, I've seen many times where it is a bottleneck because if you need to buy 1,000 cameras, and yeah, it's a. But your answer is awesome. It's just like, hey, do you want the value we're providing? So I'm guessing you've never had to buy cameras yourself. You just show them the value they'll get from it, how high it is, and that should be enough for them to buy it for themselves, right?
Yeah, or we provide it to them, right? And then it's just like at cost. So that's like we would still want to streamline. We want to be like their end partner, right? Make sure that they don't have any worry. But then at the end of the day, the cost of the cameras is never really like
That's cool.
a topic or
That's
an
awesome.
issue in this process.
Okay, very cool, very very cool. I want to touch on another topic with you regarding AI. You're a almost going to become a rare types of companies now that got started before the big AI wave, right? You got started early 2022, maybe end of 21. I don't know exactly, but ChatGPT is November 2022, so you got started a little bit before that. And so when you start, you're not an AI native company. You're very close from one, but I'm guessing maybe you became one, or you're trying to become one, or you changed. So tell me how you navigate that, because you maybe see newcomers that are AI native in your space. You had to sort of change your company to make it adapted to AI in a sense.
Yeah.
How have you done that?
So computer like from day one, right? Our product was
Yeah, of
AI, right? It
course,
was just like at that time
of
was
course.
called machine learning or deep learning. So for us, it really building the technology. The only thing we change is like changing the model, right? So I think for us, it was only like in the benefit that we had everything around the AI part already built, right? Once actually there started to be a pull from the market and everyone was ready to actually implement the technology, right? So I think for us, it's an advantage because if you have the platform, you have all of the workflows around the model already validated, battle tested, and ready to scale. And now what happens is with advancements in technology, the cost of the model gets down that you're able to scale it much more efficiently. It put us in a spot where we're perfectly positioned actually to capture the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I agree with the um, ML image analysis. It's always been AI. Have you seen AI sort of change the way you work in other parts of the business? Has AI and LLMs replaced some of your employees, agents? Have you seen other competitors, new entrants into the market do that, or has that not come up yet?
I think it's just like helping us provide a better product to our customers, right, and add more features on top, right? So if you think of all of the analysis, all of the data segmentation, also how we prototype, right? Like vibe coding a new feature and a functionality and getting customer feedback on it, iterating on that is allowing us just like to have a much faster product velocity.
Yeah, I mean, again, I love your perspective. It's always, hey, how can we bring the most value to the customers? That's all we should care
Yeah.
about in the end. You're right. We're torturing ourselves with using AI. Is like, hey, let's bring value to the customer. That's awesome. How do you think YC has changed in the last 3.5 years? You were pre Gary Tan as well. Have you been keeping up with YC? Have you seen some big changes? What do you think of that?
I think just like a bit from the outside, I just like see like one revenue expectations are much higher, right, than our time. So the ability for you to ship fast, build product fast that you're able to monetize quickly also sets an implicit expectation on where you need to be once you go at demo day, right? Like I think during our time at demo day, if you just like had a few hundred thousand in ARR, you were the shit at that time, right? So um, I think that's one thing which changed, which I think cool because like now also you have much more people already having users and generating revenue when you get to demo day versus at our time. The time to build actually like a product was much
Yeah.
longer. Mm. So I think that's an exciting development for sure.
For us investors, it is for sure. Hey, by the way, like if you, I mean you're obviously doing Syrian for quite some time, hopefully. But if you were building a company again, would you go through YC again?
I think I would recommend every first-time founder, right, to go through YC, and I think it was like an invaluable lesson. Still even to this day, our YC partners is valuable. A lot of the founders that I engage with on a day-to-day basis are founders I know through YC. So I think it's still the number one best founder community, and the value we get from YC is enormous.
What about second time founders then?
Yeah, I'll still do it, right? But you're already part of the ecosystem, so that is like a question. But that's something
Yeah.
which I'm not really thinking of. Syrian, there's still a long way to go with Syrian.
Well, yeah. Anyway, yeah, it's not a question for you specifically. Yeah, for sure. All right. What do you think do investors consistently misunderstand about industrial AI companies?
I think there is a misconception that manufacturers are slow to move, which is, I think, not true, right? I think like what we've seen with most of our customers, you might initially start with a small scope, right? But as soon as you provide value and you have the right go-to-market motion, you can actually expand and scale very fast. So it's all about like if you try to go into any manufacturer and directly land with a seven-figure large-scale rip and replace deployment, yes, this will not work and you will have extremely long sales cycles which don't go nowhere. But if you understand, okay, that hey, like the production environment is a very critical piece of operation, right? And you need to make sure that anything you deploy there works and valid and provides the value it delivers before you actually start scaling that. And if then you cater your go-to-market motion to exactly that, right? And don't force just like large deployments for the sake of it um, on manufacturers. They will be very adaptive to try new things out. And if you are actually driving value and delivering value, they will also be very fast to scale it up.
I love this insight. I probably also had the misconception that, well, I'm a good example of an investor who has this misconception. I think it's also an amazing reflection on you and the quality of what you're doing. Is it might be true that they're slow to move for some companies, but is if they're fast to move with you, it means they see the value and derive actual value from it. So that's very cool. Um, Before we wrap, I love doing a little bit of sort of long term predictions. Your opinion on when the market is going. So 10 years from now, still in your category of industrial AI, what does the category defining YC startup in this category look like in 10 years?
A very big company, right? I think manufacturing is a huge space, and if you're able to do a great job, it's also a very reference-based and trust-based industry, right? So if you do a great job and you continue prioritizing the customer, you can build a very big company in this space. And I think we're going to see in the next 10 years uh, some of the largest companies be coming out of traditional industries like manufacturing, logistics, and supply chain in general.
Yeah, I agree. Robotics is going to change a lot of things, and many things for you to monitor as well. On the other hand, what do you think is overhyped in YC right now?
I think there's a lot of people building in very competitive markets, right? I'm a very Peter Thiel fan of the approach of competition is for losers, right? And you should really try to find problems and industries that are underserved and build for them um, and focus on your customer instead of, hey, how do I build the 20th best tool that is the lovable of X, right? So that's something where I think at the end of the day, like markets will consolidate. So there's going to be some losers.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Very, very, very fan of Peter Thiel's approach as well, and it's been proven to create a lot of winners. And then last one about YC, where do you think, what do you think YC is missing in terms of types of categories or of startups that they should back? What's a startup that a type of startup you'd love to see at YC but you're not seeing today?
I think Wise is doing a great job actually already like backing a lot of companies building in the physical space, right? So they're focusing physically a lot of manufacturing. I would wish that they back more founders building in manufacturing, right? And I generally would like to see more founders building for in manufacturing, making sure that actually factory workers get all of the benefits we're reaping out of all of these advancements in
Yeah.
AI, computer vision, and so on.
Yeah, I think YC is backing as many as they can, but there's just not that many. People want to build AI, vibe coding, and well, which might be good as well. But all right, before we wrap, and it's been an absolute pleasure, Karim, by the way. So thank you so much for taking the time. Are there some
Yes.
exciting stuff about Cerrion that you want to share? Future developments? What are you excited about for the company in the next 6 to 12 months?
In general, this is now like an extremely exciting year for us where we're seeing demand across a variety of industries. So I'm spending, I think at the moment, like 70% of my time traveling between factories. So
Wow.
a lot of exciting updates coming soon, also on product launches.
All right, that's awesome. And for listeners who want to follow along, where can they follow for Syrian and for yourself? Where can they find you online?
Most active on LinkedIn at Karim Saleh.
All right, that's awesome. Well, Karim, thank you so
Yes.
much for taking the time to chat with me today. That was awesome. To our listeners, if you're still here, thank you for staying until the end. Please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel. You can watch us there; it's even better. Or on your favorite podcast platform. Please leave us a 5-star review. That really does help. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next week with another amazing YC founder. Bye, everyone.